The world watched as Princess Diana charmed millions with her elegance, kindness, and unwavering dedication to helping others. Her tragic death in 1997 shook the world, sparking an outpouring of grief like never before. But even through all the sadness and tributes, there's been one question that's remained a mystery for decades. Why was her casket closed at her funeral? Now, at 75, King Charles has finally revealed the reason behind the closed casket. It feels like it was just yesterday, doesn't it? I almost wish we could turn back time, skip ahead, and see if Diana and Charles ever had a chance to make it work. But before we dive into the long-held secret about her casket, let's take a moment to look back at how Diana won the hearts of so many people. The story of Princess Diana and Prince Charles is one of royal splendor mixed with deep personal moments, a tale that captured the world's attention. It all started with two very different people whose paths crossed, leading to a marriage that would change the royal family forever. Their relationship, though complicated and tested over time, was filled with joy, especially in the early years. Diana Frances Spencer was born on July 1, 1961, into an aristocratic family with strong ties to British high society. Her father, Edward John Spencer, was the 8th Earl Spencer, and her mother, Frances Ruth Burke Rowe, was the daughter of the 4th Baron Fermoy. Diana's childhood was a mix of privilege and hardship. The Spencers were highly respected in the aristocracy, but they also faced their fair share of struggles. When Diana was just 7 years old, her parents' marriage ended in divorce, a traumatic event that shaped her early years. She had a close bond with both parents, and the separation in 1969 meant Diana was raised mainly by her father, while her mother remained distant. Despite these emotional challenges, Diana's early life was filled with opportunities. Her family had strong connections to the royal family, thanks to her mother's ties, and she spent much of her time at the Spencer family home, Althorpe House in Northamptonshire. It was at Althorpe that Diana developed her passion for charity work and the arts. She attended a number of schools, including the prestigious West Heath Girls' School, where she stood out as a skilled swimmer and dancer. But it wasn't just her beauty that captured the world's attention. There was so much more to Diana than met the eye. Diana had this natural warmth and genuine kindness that made her stand out from other women in her position. She was known for her caring heart and her ability to empathize with those less fortunate, traits that would define her as a princess. Prince Charles, born on November 14, 1948, was the eldest son of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. From the moment he was born, Charles was in the spotlight as the heir to the British throne. His early life was very different from Diana's, full of duty and expectation. He spent much of his childhood away from his family, attending boarding schools where he was prepared for his future role. His education was one of the most intense any royal had undergone, with years of private tutors and schools like Cheam Preparatory School in Gordonstoun in Scotland, which his father had also attended. Gordonstoun was tough for Charles. The strict discipline and isolated setting were a far cry from the comforts of royal life. But despite the challenges, Charles developed a keen interest in subjects like history, agriculture, and particularly the environment. The loneliness he often felt, however, had a lasting impact on him. His relationships with his family were formal, and his mother was frequently absent due to her royal duties. This made Charles grow up with a strong sense of duty, but also a longing for more personal connections, something that would influence his relationships later on. As a young man, Charles attended the University of Cambridge, where he studied archaeology and anthropology. This was a significant turning point for him, as it allowed him to step out of the heavy pressures of royal life and see the world from a wider perspective. During these years, he began to focus more on cultural and social causes, some of which he would later champion as prince. Now, when you're in Charles's position, marrying isn't just about love, it's about choosing someone who could one day become queen. You have to be really careful about who you choose. Diana and Charles's story really began to unfold in 1977 when they first met. The first meeting between Diana and Charles was, by all accounts, pretty unremarkable. At the time, Diana was working as a nursery teacher and had no idea that the man she was meeting was the future King of England. For Charles, it was simply a chance encounter with a young woman who seemed different from the women he'd met before, intriguing in a way he hadn't expected. Despite their 13-year age gap, They quickly found common ground. Diana was easy to talk to and had this natural charm that drew people in. Charles found himself taken with her, and she was equally captivated by his sense of duty and intelligence. Before long, they were seeing each other more and more, and their relationship began to blossom. By 1981, things had gotten serious between them. The couple was regularly spotted together, and their relationship attracted a lot of media attention. After a few years of dating, Charles proposed to Diana on February 6, 1981, during a trip to the Caribbean. The proposal was celebrated worldwide, as they seemed like the perfect couple, a prince and a beautiful young woman from an aristocratic background. In the years following their wedding, Diana and Charles were blessed with 2 children. Their first son, Prince William, was born on June 21, 1982, at St. Mary's Hospital in London. William's birth was a huge event, as he was second in line to the throne. Diana made a bold decision to give birth in a hospital, breaking with the royal tradition of delivering babies at home. It was a groundbreaking move, marking a shift toward making the royal family seem more relatable to the public. 2 years later, on September 15, 1984, their second son, Prince Harry, was born. Harry's arrival completed the family, and Diana and Charles were now proud parents of 2 healthy boys. As parents, Diana and Charles were both very involved in their children's lives, though in different ways. Diana was known for her hands-on approach, often taking her sons on trips and including them in everyday activities. She worked hard to ensure that they had as normal a childhood as possible, despite their royal status. Charles, on the other hand, took a more traditional approach to fatherhood. As the future king, his role in his children's lives was always going to be more formal. His duties as Prince of Wales meant he had less time to spend with them, but it was clear that he loved his sons deeply and took immense pride in their achievements. In spite of the fact that he was married to Diana, Charles's connection with Camilla Parker Bowles has been one of the most talked about elements of his life. The early 1970s was the time when Camilla was first introduced to Charles. She was born into a British family that was well established and had links to the palace. They became really close to one another very soon. It was later revealed that Charles had been under a great deal of pressure from his family, particularly from his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, to marry someone who was a better fit in terms of social position and public impression. Hence, he chose Diana as his spouse. Camilla's marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles, a man who came from a well-respected military family, took place in 1973, which ultimately made her relationship with Charles even more problematic. In spite of the fact that they were married to different people, Charles and Camilla maintained their close relationship, and their emotional connection remained strong throughout the years. The relationship between Charles and Diana was a significant contributor to the dissolution of their marriage. Charles did feel bad about all that took place, and more recently, he disclosed the reason why Princess Diana's casket was not opened. Nevertheless, more will be discussed on that topic in the following paragraphs. However, the reality was considerably more complicated than the idea of their marriage that was reminiscent of a fairy tale. In a short amount of time, Diana discovered that the pressures of royal life were too much for her to handle, and the intense scrutiny from the public was a significant burden for her. During that time, Diana was unaware of the fact that her husband's heart was not totally hers. As the couple's marriage developed, the pressure that would come to define a significant portion of their relationship also increased. Diana was completely committed to her roles as a wife and mother. Nevertheless, Charles continued his relationship with Camilla despite the public vows he had made concerning his infidelity. Despite the fact that Diana was originally unaware of the full degree of their connection, it was clear to those who were in their immediate vicinity that Charles and Camilla's connection remained particularly strong. After some time had passed, Diana would freely discuss how Charles's emotional bond to Camilla was a major source of friction in their marriage. When Diana found out that Camilla had been involved in her marriage, she sustained a great deal of emotional distress. The fact that she had a feeling that something wasn't quite right was something that she admitted to having even before they were married. Diana's encounter with Camilla at a public event in 1981, which occurred only a few weeks after her wedding, was likely one of the most distressing experiences of her life. Considering that Charles appeared to be entirely at ease with Camilla's presence, Diana had the impression that she was competing with a spiritual being. As a result, Diana experienced feelings of alienation, miscommunication, and profound betrayal. The media never stopped harassing Diana and Charles, which only served to heighten the animosity that existed between them over the course of the years. Diana struggled privately with emotions of loneliness and betrayal, despite the fact that the birth of her kids brought her significant amount of solace. In spite of the fact that she was known to the world as a caring mother and princess, her existence within the royal family was oppressive and left little room for her to express herself or fight against the system. As time went on, Diana experienced an increasing sense of isolation, and her impatience began to manifest itself. She relied on her close friends and even members of her staff so that she could get support. In 1992, Diana's suspicions about Charles's infidelity were confirmed, which was the moment that caused her to reach her breaking point. During the course of their marriage, she learned that Charles had renewed his romance with Camilla, and the treachery was too much for her to sustain. The public grew more aware of Diana's troubles as her mental health began to decline, and her struggles became more transparent. Diana disclosed her personal struggles in a straightforward manner while she was in India in the year 1992. Her candor struck a chord with the general audience, which resulted in her becoming even more cherished. When she began to carve out a career for herself that was not dependent on her function as Prince Charles's wife, it was also the beginning of her journey toward independence. This event marked the beginning of her journey toward independence. In 1992, the couple issued a formal announcement that they were no longer together. Despite the fact that they continued to carry out their royal responsibilities independently, the damage that had been done to their relationship was irreparable. After coming to the understanding that she could no longer continue to live in a circumstance in which she felt emotionally abandoned and publicly humiliated, Diana made the decision to separate from her partner. This decision was not only a personal one. The decision that she made to leave Charles, despite the fact that it was challenging, was eventually liberating. In addition to devoting her time and energy to charitable work and the upbringing of her children, she concentrated on recreating herself outside of the royal family realm. Despite the passage of time, the passing of Princess Diana on August 31, 1997 remains one of the most startling and devastating incidents in the history of modern times. Even at this late hour, the sorrow that was caused by her loss continues to linger, and Charles has openly confessed that he feels some degree of responsibility for it. Just lately, he disclosed the truth about the circumstances surrounding her funeral. The death of Princess Diana, which took place in a car accident in Paris, shattered the very foundations of the globe. Her unexpected death, which occurred not long after she had been dubbed the People's Princess, aroused feelings and prompted inquiries all across the world. Diana was unlike any previous royal. Her elegance, beauty, and outgoing personality made her a phenomenon that was recognized all over the world. On the other hand, her life was anything but a fairy tale, despite the fact that she was adored by the public. A significant amount of strain was placed on her mental health and personal life as a result of the burden of royal expectations, which was compounded by the difficulties she faced in her marriage to Charles. In the years leading up to her passing, Diana's life had already been defined by a number of public problems. For a significant portion of their time together, her marriage to Charles had been in a state of disarray, which was further worsened by infidelity on both sides. It is well known that Charles responded, "Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." This was in response to the question of whether or not Camilla Parker Bowles played a role in the dissolution of his marriage. Following the dissolution of her marriage to Charles in 1996, the media, which had previously admired Diana, began to adopt a more critical tone toward her. Nevertheless, in spite of the transformation that occurred in the media, Diana continued to hold a unique position in the hearts of the general public. She continued to be actively interested in philanthropic endeavors and issues that benefit humanity. In spite of the fact that the media had been intrusive during her whole life, it was the paparazzi who, in the end, were the ones who were responsible for a significant portion of the catastrophe that occurred on that tragic night in Paris. The paparazzi had been persistently pursuing Diana for years, taking photographs of her every move in order to satisfy the public's insatiable hunger for the most recent information regarding the princess. Diana, together with her companion Dodi Fayed, was in Paris on the evening of August 31, 1997. A peaceful escape was on the agenda for the pair, who had just returned from spending the evening at the Ritz Hotel. Their automobile was being pursued by photographers who were keen to capture another picture of Diana, which quickly changed what should have been a peaceful and quiet evening into a chaotic situation. An aggressive and unrelenting approach was used by the paparazzi on that particular evening. Immediately after Diana's automobile departed the Ritz Hotel, photographers on motorbikes stayed close behind, taking photographs at high speeds as they drove through the streets of Paris. It was a risky pursuit, and it didn't take long before one of the unfortunate outcomes occurred. The chauffeur of Diana, Henri Paul, who was also the head of security at the hotel, was attempting to evade the photographers by driving at a high rate of speed across the city. In spite of this, Paul was unable to maintain control of the vehicle as it entered the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, and the vehicle ended up colliding with one of the concrete pillars. The force of the impact was so great that both Diana and Dodi Fayed sustained serious injuries. Dodi, however, did not survive the collision, and both of them were brought to the hospital in critical condition after the accident. During that particular period, the entire globe was unaware of how serious the situation actually was. News quickly went over the world within a few moments of the collision, with media sources all over the world reporting on the occurrence. One thing became very evident, despite the fact that there were some early inaccuracies. Princess Diana, the woman who had been in the public eye for such a significant amount of time, was struggling for her life. Diana, who was only 36 years old at the time, was pronounced dead a few hours later, despite the best efforts of the medical staff. Hearing the news of her passing caused shockwaves to travel all around the world. Many people from different parts of the world expressed their sorrow over the passing of a woman who had left an indelible mark on their hearts via her beauty, compassion, and kindness. During the funeral, which took place on September 6, 1997, millions of people watched it, making it one of the most watched events in the history of the world. It wasn't just a regal occasion, it was a moment of sadness for people all over the world. To say their final farewells to the cherished Princess of Wales, people from all walks of life gathered together to express their condolences. The passing of Diana had a profound impact on the entire world, and her funeral ultimately became a symbol of both individual and communal sorrow. She was a true icon of compassion and kindness, and she had captured the hearts of people all over the world with her extraordinary ability to relate with regular people. Diana had been a powerful symbol of compassion and generosity. The world was left in a state of shock after her catastrophic crash in Paris, and the circumstances that surrounded her only served to enhance the sense of unfairness and loss that was already present. The days that followed her passing were marked by a range of emotions, including grief, shock, and fury. Her funeral became a moment when people from all over the world joined together to express their sorrow at the loss of a woman who had impacted the lives of so many people. It was abundantly evident that this was not merely a royal occasion. Rather, it was a global event that would draw people from every corner of the world to pay their respects. This realization came about as the preparations for the burial began. The streets outside Kensington Palace, where Diana had resided for a significant amount of time, were lined with thousands of mourners in London before her passing. People who had never met her but had been profoundly impacted by her work, her style, and her real empathy were driven to express their sorrow by throwing flowers, cards, and meaningful messages at the gates. These people had never met her, but had been greatly moved by her work. Westminster Abbey served as the location for the funeral service, which was conducted with great care and dedication. This event was attended by members of the royal family, led by Queen Elizabeth, and the atmosphere was one of collective sadness. The news of Diana's passing had sent shockwaves through the entire world, and everyone was grieving in their own unique way. Diana was laid to rest in a casket that was draped with the royal standard, along with other members of her family, including Prince Charles and their kids, William and Harry. However, the coffin was closed. Not too long ago, King Charles disclosed the reason why this was the case. There was a significant influence that the news of Diana's passing had not just on the people of the United Kingdom, but also on celebrities and figures from all around the world. The reaction of Elton John, who had known Diana for many years and maintained a special link with her that was founded on mutual respect and friendship, was one of the most emotionally charged and symbolic reactions. During the time that the entire world was grieving over her untimely passing, Elton became one of the most prominent public people to have shown his sorrow. Not only did he express his sorrow on the occasion, but he also paid a particular tribute to a woman who had been extremely significant to him. Before Diana passed away, she and Elton John had a true friendship that lasted until her passing. Elton John and Diana had developed a stronger connection throughout the course of their lives, which was not only based on the fact that they had both been in the public eye at the same time, but also on the fact that they both understood the pressures that come with celebrity. Diana, who was thrown into the spotlight at a young age, and Elton, who had been with the public for a long time, discovered that they shared a common ground in their capacity to traverse the world of celebrity while yet maintaining their humanity. In 1997, only a few short months before her untimely death, Diana had served as a guest at a fundraiser ball for AIDS research that was hosted by Elton John. Their connection was more than simply superficial. It was founded on common principles, particularly their commitment to charitable work, particularly in regions that were near and dear to both of their hearts. During Diana's funeral, Elton's profound sorrow for his friend's passing displayed itself in the clearest way possible. It was requested that Elton, who is a close friend of Diana and is considered to be one of the most famous artists in the world, deliver a musical tribute. Instead of singing one of his many songs, he decided to rework the words of his song, "Candle in the Wind," which was released in 1973. The lyrics of the song, which were first composed as a tribute to Marilyn Monroe, are eerie and represent the precarious quality of life as well as the ephemeral nature of celebrity. When Elton wanted to pay tribute to Diana's life and legacy, he altered the lyrics. It was no longer about a Hollywood icon who had been devoured by fame. Rather, it was a tribute to a lady who had won the hearts of people all over the world and whose life had been tragically cut short. Diana continues to be remembered by a great number of people, including King Charles, even after all these years have passed. Over the course of several years, the narrative that surrounded her funeral centered on the concept that the casket was kept closed in order to safeguard the privacy of her family. This was a legitimate assumption, given that royal funerals are normally steeped in secrecy and traditionality. When it comes to topics of a personal nature, the royal family frequently maintains a firm defense. The recent disclosure made by King Charles, on the other hand, has given new light on this long-standing belief, which challenges what the general public had come to believe about the reasons behind the closed coffin. At the age of 75, King Charles has now disclosed the real reason that led to the decision to keep the casket of Princess Diana closed during her funeral. A number of people first believed that the decision to keep the casket closed was done in order to save Prince William and Prince Harry, Diana's children, from experiencing any more emotional distress. Numerous individuals believed that the decision was made in order to protect the children, as well as the general public, from the additional emotional blow that would be caused by viewing their mother's body. The royal family had always been very protective of the children's privacy. On the other hand, the recent admission made by King Charles made it clear that the choice was not just made to spare the family from experiencing additional anguish and to protect their privacy. Through the vehicle accident, Diana's body had been subjected to such extreme trauma that her injuries were evident to the naked eye. It was the family's fear that showing the public pictures of Diana's injuries would have been an experience that would have been significantly too traumatic for anyone to handle. To shield Diana's sons, who were already subjected to a great deal of scrutiny, from the psychological anguish that would have resulted from witnessing their mother's condition in such a public setting, was the primary motivation behind the decision. This decision exemplifies the genuine care that the royal family has for the health and safety of William and Harry, who were both adolescents at the time of the accident. Additionally, it demonstrates the necessity of protecting the general public from the terrifying reality of the accident. In the end, the decision to keep the casket closed was made out of love and sympathy for Diana's children, as well as a desire to save everyone concerned from witnessing an unimaginable sight.